Did you ever wonder how MGM turned simple scripts into roaring spectacles that filled entire theaters? From engineering massive sets to orchestrating thousands of extras, Metro Goldwyn Mayer's behind-the-scenes alchemy defined Hollywood's golden age, and its secrets still resonate in today's blockbusters. Stay tuned as we lift the curtain on the studio that built more stars than there are in heaven. Metro Goldwyn Mayer was born in 1924 when Marcus Lowe merged his Lowe's Theaters chain with Metro Pictures and Goldwyn Pictures, creating an entertainment empire with unmatched resources. Within months, MGM's offices buzzed with ideas for grand stories purpose-built to dazzle audiences. Central to its formula was one unwavering principle: more stars than there are in heaven. With this motto carpeted across their executive walls, MGM scouted every corner of stage and screen for talent, assembling a roster that read like royalty. Garbo, Gable, Crawford, Thalberg's roster of luminaries radiated prestige and guaranteed packed houses. Yet their real genius lay not only in star power, but in the studio's infrastructure: custom-built backlots stretching miles, soundstages the size of aircraft hangars, and an army of artisans, from sculptors to seamstresses, ready to materialize any vision Hollywood could dream up. Take, for instance, the making of Ben-Hur, 1925. To depict ancient Jerusalem, MGM constructed an immense replica of Solomon's Temple facade on Lot 6, covering an area equivalent to 4 football fields. Over 50 horses were imported from across America, unbroken and spirited, to charge alongside the chariot stunts. Director Fred Niblo and producer Irving Thalberg coordinated these scenes like military maneuvers. 40 cameramen set along scaffolded towers captured every angle, while hundreds of extras filled the stands. MGM's craftsmen carved stone reliefs, painted by hand to approximate marble, while interior decorators laid silk draperies by the mile. When the cameras finally stopped rolling, the studio had spent over $500,000 on a single sequence, more than twice the cost of many entire films of that era. But the spectacle paid off. Audiences gasped at the realism, and Ben-Hur became an early prototype for cinematic event filmmaking. Behind the glitz, however, lay a skeletal efficiency unmatched by rival studios. Louis B. Mayer famously quipped that MGM made pictures that were profitable first, then popular. He insisted on pre-production planning so meticulous that every shot, every costume change, every lighting cue was storyboarded before the first prop was borrowed. Department heads, art, costume, editing, music, met in weekly conferences with directors and writers to align creative ambitions with budget realities. When Fritz Lang arrived in 1926 to direct Metropolis, though ultimately produced under UFA's eye, MGM offered to host the American scenes on their backlot in Culver City, complete with advanced lighting grids that MGM's engineers had pioneered. These solutions not only streamlined production, but also forged technical standards: camera dollies on rubber wheels, synchronized sound playback systems, and multi-tiered lighting rigs that could simulate golden sunsets or storm-lashed skies at a moment's notice. As talkies gained momentum, MGM leapt ahead by investing in dual-purpose stages wired for both live orchestra pits and acoustic isolation booths. In 1929, when musicals were all the rage, the studio boasted over 30 composer-arranger teams working round the clock. Every morning, sheet music printed overnight arrived at musicians' stands. By afternoon, orchestrations were recorded and transferred to Vitaphone discs. This vertical integration meant a film like The Broadway Melody, 1929, moved from script to release in under 8 weeks, a pace that competitors could scarcely match. And because MGM owned its own distribution network of Lowe's theaters, the studio guaranteed prime bookings and nationwide premieres, turning even mid-budget musicals into box office extravaganzas. No discussion of MGM's blockbuster formula would be complete without spotlighting the studio's secret weapon, David O. Selznick. As head of production in the early 1930s, Selznick championed story-driven epics like A Tale of Two Cities, 1935, and Anna Karenina, 1935. His approach meshed literary sophistication with visual grandeur. Under Selznick's guidance, screenwriters adapted Dickens and Tolstoy, not as stodgy dramas but as engines for romance, intrigue, and visceral visuals. Script meetings became collaborative labs where dialogue was honed over weeks, scenes were choreographed with director George Cukor, and costume sketches underwent multiple drafts by Travis Banton to reflect each character's arc. Through Selznick's innovations, MGM films attained narrative depth alongside the studio's trademark sheen. Meanwhile, on the lot's southern edge, MGM's art department flourished under the leadership of Cedric Gibbons, whose Oscar-winning designs reshaped cinematic aesthetics. Gibbons pioneered the concept of mise en scene by design, arranging every element, architecture, furniture, props, background actors, to underscore the emotional tone of each scene. His art department employed over 200 sculptors, painters, and set builders, churning out an average of 10 new sets per week. In 1934, The Thin Man, when Nick and Nora Charles danced through opulent drawing rooms, each piece of silverware, each patterned rug, each chandelier was chosen to reflect the character's playful elegance. Gibbons even authored a style guide for MGM, laying out color palettes and decorative motifs to ensure consistency across genres, from gangster flicks to period romances. MGM's costuming house, led by Adrian Adolph Greenberg, known simply as Adrian, was equally formidable. Adrian dressed Greta Garbo, Joan Crawford, and Jean Harlow, translating their star personas into fabric narratives. His process began with hand-drawn sketches on oversized pages, often 3 feet tall, capturing every ruffle, sequin, and silhouette. Seamstresses then translated these designs into actual garments, fitting each actress multiple times under Harvey, the draper's watchful eye. For 1935, Mutiny on the Bounty, Adrian crafted replica naval uniforms complete with brass buttons and braided epaulettes. The realism not only impressed historical consultants, but also lent the film an authenticity that elevated its carnage and romance on equal footing. Music supervision was yet another pillar of the MGM blockbuster. Under director of music Herbert Stothart, MGM maintained in-house orchestras that recorded scores live to film. Composers like Franz Waxman and Miklos Rozsa could see final cuts by morning and conduct premieres by afternoon. This immediacy allowed for dynamic scoring, swelling strings that counterpointed dramatic reveals and low brass countermelodies, underscoring ominous pursuits. In 1939, Wizard of Oz's iconic Over the Rainbow sequence was tested in dozens of musical arrangements before settling on Harold Arlen's shimmering melody, backed by multi-track recording that layered violin harmonics to evoke pure wonder. Equally crucial was MGM's publicity machinery. Headed by Eddie Mannix and Howard Strickling, the publicity department orchestrated press campaigns weeks before filming began. They seeded rumors, Harlow's secret engagements, Garbo's rumored retirement, to stoke fan magazines, then unveiled behind-the-scenes exclusives during production lulls. When Gone with the Wind, 1939 finally premiered under Selznick's independent banner, MGM's Loews Theaters plastered its marquees with teaser panels, exclusive gala ticket contests, and radio tie-ins featuring Clark Gable interviews. The result, an audience fervor that propelled the film to become the studio's highest-grossing release of all time. MGM's final secret was its contract system. Under the studio's star-making machinery, actors weren't freelancers but salaried employees, bound by multi-year contracts that guaranteed controlled career trajectories. Under these terms, MGM curated each star's image, weekly grooming sessions at the in-house salon, etiquette coaching in the studio's personal finishing school, and public appearances choreographed to reinforce each actor's persona. While critics decried this factory system, it enabled MGM to launch dozens of films annually with familiar faces, ensuring that audiences returned to theaters again and again, confident they'd encounter both novelty and reliability on every screen. By integrating every element, story, set design, costume, music, publicity, and the talent itself, Metro Goldwyn Mayer crafted more than films, they forged cultural events. Their blockbusters were not the result of chance, but of an intricate ballet of artisans, executives, and stars coordinated down to the last detail. In Part 2, we'll delve into specific case studies: The Wizard of Oz, Ben-Hur, 1959, and the revival of Gone with the Wind, and uncover how MGM's playbook evolved in the television era, surviving studio declines while inspiring modern franchises. Stay tuned to see how MGM's blueprint for spectacle echoes in today's cinematic universes. And then there was The Wizard of Oz, 1939, the film that stands as MGM's crowning achievement in spectacle and studio synergy. Few know the extent to which every department at Culver City labored in unison to bring Oz to life. Pre-production meetings ran for weeks as art directors sketched yellow brick roads over 6,000 feet of painted canvas. Over 100 Technicolor cameras were tested to achieve the precise ruby red hue of Dorothy's slippers. Costume makers stitched more than 100 Dorothy dresses so Judy Garland could swap between scenes without pause. Sound engineers boasted custom-built boom arms to capture every note of Over the Rainbow live on set. Editors used 3 parallel negative trunks, one for each shade in the ruby slippers, to ensure color consistency. And when MGM's music division recorded Harold Arlen's score, they used an 80-piece orchestra under tight supervision, laying down 3 different orchestrations before choosing the final mix. When audiences first beheld Oz in glorious widescreen color, they weren't just watching a movie. They were witnessing the culmination of MGM's relentless attention to detail. A generation later, MGM would revive its blockbuster prowess with Ben-Hur, 1959. This was a different MGM, no longer the unchallenged overlord of Hollywood, but a studio fighting for relevance in the era of television and roadshow epics. Producer Sam Zimbalist assembled a new backlot chariot racecourse, 5,000 extras, 24 horses broken to harness, and a 1-2-mile oval track meticulously graded to exact angles. Director William Wyler insisted on a camera placement grid covering 60 cameras, still and 65mm MGM Camera 65 negatives, so that no hoofbeat would go undocumented. Meanwhile, the special effects team engineered dust machines capable of generating 200 tons of sand per hour. Art directors built removable seating sections to capture both widescreen panoramas and close-ups. Composer Miklos Rozsa wrote an 80-minute score, one of the longest in Hollywood history, recorded in triple orchestral sessions. When it all came together, Ben-Hur wasn't just a movie. It was an event, grossing over $146 million and winning 11 Oscars. But even more important, it demonstrated that MGM could still conjure blockbusters by applying its old-school studio blueprint to new technologies and global distribution strategies. Another MGM centerpiece, Gone with the Wind, though produced independently by Selznick International Pressures, relied on Lowe's MGM distribution muscle to become the ultimate roadshow attraction. In 1939, MGM theaters across America rolled out red carpets, souvenir programs, and live orchestral preludes to screenings, treating the film as a social gala rather than mere entertainment. This partnership between production spectacle and exhibition grandeur exemplified MGM's holistic approach. The studio didn't just make films, it choreographed the entire audience experience. When Gone with the Wind finally premiered at Lowe's Grand Theater in Atlanta, the event drew 300,000 attendees lining city blocks. Ticket revenue alone covered the film's budget twice over in its first week. By the 1960s, MGM was no longer the monolithic factory it once was, but its legacy studios, Culver City, the commissary, the backlots, remained hotbeds of creativity. Riders in the Sky, 1949, was shot on recycled sets from earlier epics. 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968 utilized MGM's old tank lots to build its iconic space station V model. Television, which MGM had once feared, became another outlet. The Thin Man, Lassie, and Dr. Kildare brought studio glamour into living rooms, teaching a new medium how to replicate the blockbuster mindset on modest budgets. By crafting weekly episodic cliffhangers and lavish title sequences, MGM Television translated the event film ethos into prime-time drama. Today, the DNA of MGM's golden age survives in modern franchises. When Peter Jackson built the world of Middle-earth, his Weta Workshop team studied MGM's art department archives to understand large-scale model-making and color palettes for fantastical landscapes. The Dune. 2021 production designers cited MGM's sandstorm effects in Ben-Hur as inspiration for their own practical wind machines and set decoration. Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon crew turned to the studio's silent-era costume records to recreate 1920s Hollywood authenticity. Even Marvel's Endgame, shot largely on green screens, hired former MGM backlot ranch coordinators to advise on crowd replication and set dressing. At the core of these connections lies a simple truth. MGM's blockbuster formula was never about fat budgets alone, but about the seamless blending of story, image, sound, and star power within a unified production ecosystem. That ecosystem fostered a sense of shared purpose. Writers, technicians, craftspeople, and actors were not isolated functionaries, but collaborators in a grand narrative. When the MGM orchestra recorded its final notes, studio executives knew that every job, from calligrapher to lighting gaffer, had contributed to something bigger than themselves. So what lessons can today's filmmakers glean from MGM's secret playbook? First, invest in pre-production. Storyboards aren't just marketing tools. They're negotiation documents that align vision and cost. Second, integrate departments early. Costumers and art directors should attend table reads. Music supervisors should score during shooting to reflect real pacing. Third, leverage exhibition partnerships. Even in the streaming era, premiere events, limited theatrical runs, and interactive apps can replicate the MGM event model. Finally, cultivate star identity. Not as a byproduct of publicity stunts, but through consistent role choices, bespoke wardrobes, and authentic narrative arcs. MGM's studio lot may have shuttered its gates in 1986, but its spirit lives on in every blockbuster that aspires to be more than a film, every cinematic odyssey that promises to transport audiences, to leave them talking for days, and to echo in cultural memory for decades. The next time you're swept away by a 10-minute tracking shot, an explosive set piece, or a star-driven performance that feels weighty with myth, pause to consider the invisible architecture beneath it all, a lineage stretching back to Culver City, where Metro Goldwyn Mayer dared to build better worlds, one studio soundstage at a time.